So, all right, everyone, thank you for joining us and thanks for jumping on this webinar. And our virtual adventure for kids through Peru, the land of the Inca, is just about to get started. So let's go ahead and get to Peru. All right, so again, what and who is Austin Adventures? First of all, as I said earlier, my name is Kasey Austin, president of Austin Adventures, and we're going to be learning about my favorite country today, which is Peru. And I consider my first big trip abroad to be the country of Peru when I was 15 years old. I went with my dad and my brother. That's actually us in this photo. Kind of a grainy image that was 15 years ago. Photos weren't quite what they were, what they are today, right? But we went on a 3-week trip to Peru and Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. And I just remember seeing Machu Picchu for the first time and absolutely staring at it in awe and just falling in love with Peru on that trip. And I have very much loved that place so much ever since. I've actually been back there another 2 times, so 3 times total since that first trip, and I cannot wait to go again. I love it so much. I can't wait till travel restrictions open up so we can be traveling to these really cool international destinations once again. So back to Austin Adventures. Our company creates guided active vacations for families like yours, and you get to go hiking, biking, horseback riding, whitewater rafting, fun things like that. They're active. And you get to sleep in nice hotels every night. We don't usually camp or anything like that. And you get to eat really delicious food. That's a big focus for us because I love to eat. Our company is family owned and operated, and I work alongside my mom and dad every day, probably a lot like what you're doing right now, stuck at home. I know a lot of the schools are closing for the rest of the year, it sounds like. Here in Montana, actually, they had the choice to open up, but a lot of them are choosing to stay closed. I mean, it's May. Who wants to open back up now, honestly? But yeah, I'm stuck at home working myself during this pandemic, and it's all good. You know, I kind of have learned to enjoy it somewhat. So I hope you're learning to adjust and enjoy yourselves as well. And we're going to be embarking on these virtual adventures Thursdays at 2:00 p.m., at least through the rest of May. We'll see if they get extended. I don't really know what's going on June and beyond yet, but we hope you'll join us weekly. There's like another, I think, 4 coming up after this. So please keep on joining us. And thanks to those of you who are jumping on every week. That's so awesome. I love seeing some of the same names popping up over and over again. And if you were able to join us last week, we went to the Mount Rushmore State. And for those of you who remember what that is, it was South Dakota. And we explored some really cool places like the Old West town of Deadwood, the home of the world famous motorcycle rally Sturgis, the Badlands, Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills. That was one of my favorite presentations we've done so far. South Dakota is really cool. So if you missed that one, go ahead, you can go to our website and watch it. We've also been so far on these presentations to Yellowstone, we've been to Costa Rica, Alaska, and we also did one with Jeff the nature guy from Zoo Montana here in Billings, which was really fun, and we got to meet a few animals. So if you didn't get to watch any of these virtual adventures, you're welcome to go to Austin Adventures website, and we've uploaded all the recordings there. You can go watch them on your own time, okay? And last week, you guys had some really great questions, so we want to make sure we have plenty of time to cover all the things you're wondering about Peru. So let's go ahead and get started. And remember, if you do have any questions, just type them into the Q&A box, and I'll see if I can get to them. There's a lot of questions in there so far already, but keep them coming, people. I'll probably answer them closer to the end of the presentation, just so I can stay focused, okay? All right, guys. So where are we going today? I think you already know if you've been on since the beginning, but we are going to my favorite country on planet Earth, Peru. I love Peru so much. I've been back 3 times. I went for the first time when I was 15 years old, as I just talked about a minute ago. But since then, on my trips, I have gone back, and I've gone back to Machu Picchu every time, which I can't stay away from that site apparently. I've hiked in via the Inca Trail, the Salcantay Trail, the Lares Route. All 3 trails end at the famous Inca ruins of Machu Picchu, which is what you're looking at in this picture. That's me actually and my college roommate when we went back in 2012. And that's Machu Picchu behind us. We climbed up Huayna Picchu, and that's like a really steep, crazy mountain with really steep, narrow steps that almost feel like a ladder as you're going up. But you get some really cool viewpoints from up there of Machu Picchu looking down at the site. So this amazing country, it's wonderful. you know, they have amazing people there, and it just keeps drawing me back time and time again. I love this place, and I can't wait to share it with you, and I can't wait to go back again. All right, so let's take a look at where Peru sits in the continent of South America. So Peru is crowned by the towering Andes and tucked between the Amazon rainforest on the east side of the country and the Pacific Ocean to the west side of the country. You can see it there outlined in red on this map. And Peru is the third largest country in South America after Brazil and Argentina, and its borders touch Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, and Chile. Okay, so you can kind of see it there on the map. It's a pretty big country. So let's just cover a teeny tiny bit of Peru's history to give you a bit of background. So first of all, Peru is a very old country, much older than the United States, I guess, with its first inhabitants and things like that. It's thought the earliest inhabitants arrived there about 15,000 years ago, and societies emerged on the west coast near the ocean more than 5,000 years ago. And they began to spread inland from there. So they started at the ocean, started moving inland. And one of the most important Peruvian cultures that we can find evidence of today was the Inca, if you've ever heard of them. They lived in Peru around 600 years ago, and their capital, Cusco, is still a major city today. The Inca also built Machu Picchu, which is what this little girl is pointing to in this picture. And Machu Picchu is a famous and mysterious ancient city in the Andes Mountains. And the Inca thrived for centuries before being conquered by the Spanish in 1532. And we'll take a deeper look at Machu Picchu a little later in this adventure, because there is a lot more to share on this really cool, fascinating place. All right, so there are 3 main languages spoken in Peru. We have, and notice on the screen, one of them is not English. Spanish is spoken by about 84% of the population, making it by far the most widely spoken language in Peru. It's the principal language of the government, the media, and the education system, all right? Quechua is the second most common language, and it's the most widely spoken native language, spoken by about 13% of the population. And Quechua was actually the language of the Inca Empire back in the 1400s and before that, okay? And last but not least, we have Aymara, which is spoken by about 2% of the population, but it's kind of a struggling language that's trying to battle against the more widely spoken languages of Spanish and Quechua. And the locals who speak Aymara mostly live in the extreme south along the border of Bolivia, okay? So it's always tough with those languages. Sometimes they die out over time. The fewer people that speak them, the more they start to disappear. So hopefully that language won't disappear, but Spanish and Quechua are kind of the main ones that you'll run into. And I'm sure you'll have noticed that English didn't make it on to this list of most widely spoken languages, but that's okay, right? Most of the locals in the world of tourism are bilingual, which means that they speak several languages, English being one of them a lot of times, because that is a very common language used throughout the entire world. And there are many people who speak English throughout Peru who can help you get around. So I don't speak Spanish fluently, I speak it a little bit, but I get around there pretty easily myself. So if I can do it, you can definitely do it. All right, and a few Peru facts for you. So Peru is a very poor country, but it is one of the richest in terms of natural resources. That means the country is one of the world's top producers of gold and silver, copper, lead, iron, and zinc, and it also has big reserves of oil and natural gas, all right? And another fact, if you go to Peru, you're gonna need to convert some of your money to the Peru national currency, which is the sol. That's their dollar, basically, is the sol. So approximately 3 sols equals $1 US. So if you go to the local market to buy something, you'll need to do some quick math in your head to figure out if you're going to get a good deal or not. Speaking of going to the market, one of the fun things to do in Peru that you don't really get to do in the States much is barter. It's part of the culture there. So if a vendor wants you to pay 20 sols, which would be about $6 US or so, for a necklace, you can offer maybe 10 sols and possibly agree to meet in the middle at 15 sols if they agree that that's a good price. It took me a while to get used to this bartering system, but it really is a part of everyday life there. And the locals kind of expect it out of you. They purposely give you a higher price so that you can barter down to a lower price. So I don't really recommend trying out this bartering technique at your local Walmart or Target. It's probably not going to work here in the States. But I do think that if you go to Peru, you should definitely practice your skills in the markets there. It's really fun. And as for my last fun fact, do any of you know what a cuy is? I'm going to spell it out for you. C-U-Y. Any guesses in the Q&A section here for what a cuy is? It's a type of animal. Anyone? Oh, there's a lot of people who are getting it right. I think you've heard of this before. Maybe a type of bird. Is it a fish? A monkey or a pig? A llama? A lot of good questions. A lot of good answers, I guess. You guys are answering my question. A fat dog. I don't know about that. An alpaca. Oh my gosh, so many different responses coming in. So it is a guinea pig. That's what a cuy is. So here in the States, a cuy or a guinea pig is often a pet, but in Peru, it's actually a traditional meat used in Peruvian meals. How crazy is that? It's estimated that 65 million guinea pigs are consumed in Peru each year. And in case you were wondering, yes, I have eaten cuy before. When I've gone to Peru a couple times, I've eaten it a few times. And it's actually pretty good. You have to eat it when it's like piping hot right out of the oven, or maybe it got fried or something like that. But it's pretty good. It kind of has a taste somewhere between a chicken and a rabbit, I guess you could call it. It's a bit gamey, but it's still pretty okay as far as guinea pigs go. It's not really something I'd bring back to have on my menu here in the United States. But, you know, when you're in Peru, that's the local dish that you got to try. You got to have your cuy. Okay. And no, you don't have to try it, okay? In case you were wondering, it's an option, but you should, right? Got to live large. All right, so what is Peru known for? So before we jump into a check-in so I can see how much you're learning so far, I just want to quickly do a dive into the three main things Peru is known for, at least in my humble opinion, okay? We've got what I like to call the 3 A's. We have the Amazon, we have the Andes Mountains, and we have the ancient Inca civilizations. All right, those are the 3 A's in my mind: the Andes, the Amazon, and the ancient Inca civilizations. Remember those, okay? So let's dive into what each of those is here really quick. So first off, let's talk about the Amazon. Ever heard of it? I bet most of you have. It's pretty widely known out there, I think. The Amazon is the largest tropical jungle in the world, and it's spread out over 8 countries in South America. And you can see the darker green spot on this map shows you just how expansive this giant rainforest really is, okay? The Amazon begins let's go to the Amazon River here. You can see it on this map. The Amazon River begins its 4,000-mile journey high in the Peruvian Andes, and it makes its way east through thousands of miles of rainforest until it eventually empties into the Atlantic Ocean on the northeast coast of Brazil. You can kind of see its path there through South America. And the Peruvian Amazon covers more than 60% of the country and is one of the most biologically diverse regions on planet Earth. A staggering 1 in 10 known species on the planet can be found in the Amazon rainforest, including 40,000 plant species, 3,000 fish species, 1,500 bird species, and 370 types of reptiles. So if you're a lover of wildlife like me, you'll definitely want to put the Amazon on your vacation hotspot list. There is plenty of wildlife to be seen in that area. And of course, we also have the famous Amazon River. We talked a little bit about this already, but can you see that blue line labeled the Amazon River on the map? So it's running through the north of the rainforest, and it's a massive network of many hundreds of waterways that make up by far the mightiest river on Earth in terms of volume and width. And at certain points in the rainy season, this river can be 30 miles wide. That's crazy. Normally here in the States, I'm used to going up to a river and being able to, wave to someone on the other side. If a river is 30 miles wide, you would not be able to see anyone on the other side of that river. That would be during the flooding or the raining season. And last but not least, there are around 400 to 500 indigenous tribes who call the Amazon rainforest their home. And it's believed that maybe about 50 of these tribes have never had contact with the outside world. How crazy is that? Can you imagine just being in the Amazon rainforest and never, ever meeting another human being outside of your own individual family and your tribe? That is incredible. I just think that is so cool. All right, so that was our first A, the Amazon. Now we're going on to our second A, which is the Andes Mountains. All right, so the second A, Andes. On this map, the Andes are that brown shaded section, that's hard to say, that goes from the top of the South American continent down to the bottom of the continent, and it's kind of there on the left-hand side. And the Andes is the longest mountain range in the world, and it also boasts some of the highest peaks on planet Earth. Great knowledge to have for all you future mountain climbers out there. The only mountains that are actually taller than the mountains in the Andes are the mountains that are in the Himalayas, which are over in Asia, which kind of makes sense because that's where Mount Everest is, which is the tallest mountain on planet Earth. So that makes a lot of sense, right? So a few other fascinating facts about our amazing Andes. Most of the Andean peaks are actually volcanic. Some of them are inactive volcanoes, but others still erupt at times, which is pretty cool. And did you know that the Andes mountain range, they've helped feed the world? I didn't really know this actually until I looked it up just now. I seem to remember learning it at one point, but I thought this was cool. Potatoes and tomatoes, two of the most widespread crops on planet Earth, actually originated in the Andes Mountains. There's over 3,800 types of potatoes grown in Peru alone. 3,800 types. Holy potatoes. And here I thought the good old russet potato was the only potato for me. Apparently, I have a lot more taters I need to try out there. That's cool. And last but not least, the Andes are renowned for their incredible biodiversity. There are 3 main climate zones, the tropical Andes in the north, and then we have the dry Andes in the center, and then we have the wet Andes in the south. Okay, and with so many different ecosystems spread across this mountain range, the Andes support an incredible array of wildlife, but not nearly as much as its neighbor, the Amazon, but still impressive numbers-wise, right? There's over 600 different types of mammals, there's 1,700 types of birds, and there's 600 species of reptiles that call the Andes home. So the Andes, they got a lot going for them, I think. All right, and then we have ancient civilizations. All right, that's our third A, ancient Inca civilization. So the Inca, they were a civilization whose empire was in the Andes of South America, and theirs was the largest empire in the Americas and was pretty darn big even by today's standards. To give you an idea of when this empire ruled, the Inca civilization existed shortly before Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas, way back in the 1500s, okay? And over the course of 100 years, the Inca conquered tribe after tribe until their empire stretched nearly the entire length of Western South America across the Andes. And the Inca had a strong central government. There was almost no crime, as punishment was very harsh. They had a strong army. They had roads and bridges and aqueducts. The government cared for the sick and the old. They invented terrace farming to make farming easier on the sharp mountain slopes. You'll see terraces throughout this presentation. I'll point them out in a little bit. They had stores of food they distributed to all the people in times of drought. Most people were farmers, but the Inca also had specialized professions like weavers who made fabulous textiles and musicians who created new instruments like the flute and the drum. And they were very clever people who came up with many brilliant ideas on things like tracking time, making music, communicating over long distances, and creating cities like Machu Picchu, the construction of which is still a mystery to this day, but more on that soon. About 100 years after they had grown into an empire that stretched the length of South America, the Spanish were actually the ones who ended up conquering the Inca civilization. And today in South America, in the modern country of Peru, you can still find ancestors of the incredible Incas and much evidence of the ancient empire they left behind. So that's definitely one of the cool things to go and check out in Peru, is seeing all this cool evidence. You can see in this picture actually over here, all of those stone-looking buildings, those were built in the time of the Inca, which is pretty amazing that they're still standing to this day. They must have been pretty good construction guys, right? All right, everyone, so what we're gonna do now, those of you who've been with me before know what the polls are. So I'm going to launch a poll right now. You should see it popping up on your screen, but this is just a quick check-in to see if you've learned anything so far, because I might just be sitting up here blabbering a little bit, maybe a lot of it, but I want to make sure you're learning, okay? So let's go through this. I see a few of you are already voting. I'm going to read out the questions now. Number 1, what is one of the traditional foods I mentioned that you've got to try at least once while in Peru? Trout, guinea pig, condor, or llama? Bonus points if you can answer what it's called in Spanish in the Q&A, okay? And number 2 is, which of the following is not one of the 3 A's that Peru is best known for? What do you think? Is it the Amazon, the Andes, avocados, or ancient civilizations? And number 3, which of the following ancient empire civilizations had their home base in the Andes of South America? Was it the Maya, the Aztec, or the Inca? Oh yeah, I see a lot of you getting that right. Even the spelling, nice job. It's kind of a weird, it's a short word, but it's spelling wise. Nice. The kui. Which one was that? All right, guys, it looks like most of you have entered your votes here. Just gonna give you about 5 more seconds because I see a few more coming in, but finish up your answers. Good job, good job. All right, I'm gonna end the poll and share the results with you as I go over this. So what is one of the traditional foods I mentioned that you've got to try at least once while in Peru? Looks like guinea pig, ding, ding, ding. That's the right answer. And I see that a lot of you got the spelling right of the Spanish name too, C-U-Y, cuy. All right, so that's the one thing you gotta try, in my opinion, while you're in Peru. And number 2, which of the following is not one of the 3 A's that Peru is best known for? This one was a bit tricky because avocados actually do grow in Peru and they're very well known there actually. But that's not one of them that I went over, was it? A bit tricky. So yes, Peru is known for its Amazon, Andes, ancient civilizations. Avocados definitely grow there, but it's not super widely known as the other 3 are, okay? And which of the following ancient empire civilizations had their home base in the Andes of South America? That one is indeed the Inca. Nice work, people. Let's stop the share results and keep moving along. You guys are so smart. I love it. All right, everyone. So we're going to start our official journey through Peru. And with every journey, we need some sort of map to show us the way. So, you know, especially in a place we might not know very well, like Peru. So throughout our virtual adventure today, we'll keep coming back to a map so we can make sure we're sticking to our route. All right, so our first stop is going to be the big city of Lima, which I'll tell you more about in a minute. But first, let's listen to a bit of traditional music by Los Quipus, who they're like a Peruvian musical group, I guess. And I just want to make sure, as you're listening to this music, that you're studying this map and kind of getting a feel for the layout of the land, okay? So as I'm playing this song, take a look at the map.
Cantando te conocí, linda marujita, como rosita en botón de la primavera. Cantando te conocí, linda marujita, como rosita en botón de la primavera. Cantando te di mi amor, todas mis caricias, porque tú fuiste la flor que cautivaste mi alma. Cantando te di mi amor, todas mis caricias, porque tú fuiste la flor que cautivaste.
Nice. Looks like some of you are loving it. Some of you maybe not so much loving it. That's okay. That's totally fine. But that's some of the more traditional music of Peru. And of course, they have really cool music just like us. They have their own rappers. They have their own, you know, musical groups, their own version of Justin Bieber, that kind of thing in country. But today we're going to be mostly listening to traditional music. All right. Let's keep on moving along to Lima. So we've arrived to what is called the City of Kings here, where we're going to begin today's virtual tour of Peru. And most visitors flying into Peru fly into Lima, which is the capital of the country, and it's the largest city, which is home to 8.5 million people. So a lot of people there, right? The city stretches out along the Pacific coast for miles in each direction, and it's famous for its world-class food, its colonial-style architecture, and its surfing. Gotta have that surfing near the ocean. That ocean looks amazing, doesn't it? Even though Lima is a huge metropolis, I think it's worth it to fly in and spend a night or two here just to have time to explore a few gems of the city and, you know, to catch up on maybe some sleep after the long flight to get here and things like that. So let's explore just a few things that make Lima so neat. So our first stop in Lima is going to be the Magic Water Circuit, which is located in a 19-acre park within the city. And this attraction actually made it into the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest water fountain complex in a public park. So let's just take a look at this video to see what it looks like. Wow, pretty cool, huh? There's not only a water show every evening that features a dozen fountains shooting water into the air and choreographed music and light, but there's also interactive fountains there that are perfect for kids like you guys. A few of the fountains include walking beneath a flowing dome of jets, and there's a tunnel of water, but my personal favorite, it's what's called the Laberinto del Ensueño. It's the maze of the dream is how that translates in English. And in this water fountain, you must make your way to the center of the maze without trying to get wet. But it's kind of impossible because the water's shooting up at random intervals all over the place. So you have to kind of watch it for a little while and time it right to see if you can get to the center of the maze without getting hit by the water, which is really fun, right? You probably will get soaked, so just make sure you bring a change of clothes. It's really fun though. All right. So another neat spot for kids in Lima that is of course on my list of hot spots is the Choco Museum. And what do you think the Choco Museum is famous for? Chocolate! My favorite. Lima is home to not one, but 4 chocolate museums. And the museum itself is free to enter, and you can discover the history and the nature and production process of all things chocolate. But there's also workshops that you can sign up for in which you make your own chocolate from bean to bar, as they say. Or you can even sign up for a cooking class in which your guide takes you through a nearby market to shop for your dinner and helps your family learn how to prepare a meal made out of local ingredients that you purchase at the market. And of course, you know, if you do something like that, there's got to be something really delicious and chocolatey for dessert that you make yourself, which is really fun. Okay, and then if you are feeling like you need a bit of activity in your life, you'll definitely want to head over to the Malican, which is a cliff-top coastal path that runs 6 miles through the districts of Miraflores and Barranco. And as a side note, a district is just an area of a city, basically. So if you're in a city with nearly 9 million people like Lima, you need different districts or something like this to tell people how to get from one area of town to another, or to tell someone where you're at in the city. There's 43 different districts in Lima, okay? So anyway, back to the Malican. This route is dotted with parks featuring views all along the city's Pacific coastline, and some of these even offer a variety of interesting sculptures. This is also the most popular area for paragliding in Lima, although the minimum age is 14, so maybe some of you on this can't go quite yet, but it's still fun to watch, even if you can't do it yourself. And if riding a bike sounds better than walking, you can hire a bike in the district of Miraflores to get around, which is pretty fun. But yeah, you can kind of see in this picture that the Malecon there, that little trail that's right there along the cliff edge. How cool does that look? Okay. So let's get out of the big city and head for my favorite city in the world, Cusco. Normally, most people take an easy 1-hour flight to get to Cusco, but in this case, there are a few less visited sites I don't want you to miss along the way. So we're gonna hit up Paracas Nature Preserve. We're gonna hit up Huacachina Desert Oasis, which is really cool, and Nazca, which I'll tell you more about in a minute, and then eventually make our way to Cusco. So let's take a look at our route while listening to some more music. Awesome. So you can see that's a 20-hour drive if you do that whole thing. So that's why so many people just fly from Lima to Cusco, right? Let's go. We're going to stop at Paracas National Reserve here, okay? So this is our first stop. It's about a 4-hour drive from Lima. Again, most tourists skip these really cool sites that are just half a day away from the big city, which is really a shame. I mean, look how beautiful this place is. So Paracas National Reserve is Peru's only marine protected area, and there's a ton of wildlife here. This region has a fascinating history and culture, while at the same time having landscapes that will take your breath away. They're so pretty. The rock formations here, kind of like the one shown in the upper left-hand corner, it's notoriously windy, so the combination of strong waves and wind has sculpted the landscape into these beautiful, dramatic rock formations, which are most definitely Instagram worthy. Okay, and there are also some really neat beaches, mostly for exploring by foot due to the type of terrain, but there are a few swimming beaches in this area as well. And last but not least, you should definitely book a boat trip out to the nearby Ballestas Islands, which is where you get to go see sea lions and seals and the Humboldt penguins, turtles, a bunch of different birds like albatross and pelicans and various seagulls and things like that. So that's your big wildlife area in this area, is the Ballestas Islands. That is a really neat place to stop on your way to Cusco. All right, and then we got the Huacachina Desert Oasis. And admittedly, you're not going to find Huacachina on your standard Peru itinerary, but I've got to throw this destination in as one of our stops because you kids will love this one. It's really fun. First of all, the little town of Huacachina itself is really cool because it's located in the only desert oasis in all of South America. And for those of you not sure what an oasis is, it's basically a spot where water is found in the middle of the desert, something that's very unusual. So in Huacachina, the thing you got to do is you got to go on a sandboarding and dune buggy tour. And what you'll do is you'll jump into a 4-wheel drive dune buggy driven by a professional driver who's going to take you up and down the dunes at super fast speeds. And then, you know, that itself is an adventure. So then you're going to get to go sandboarding once you get to a cool place just outside this little town here. And sandboarding is basically like snowboarding, but instead of snow, you go boarding down the fine-grained sand of the desert. And if you can't stand up on the board, that's okay. You just lay down on your stomach and you go sand sledding instead. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. I think that's how I would do it too. So let's watch a quick video just to see what this experience is like. fun does that look? Oh my gosh. And someone asked, is sand sledding safe? I'd say it probably has about the same safety as regular sledding on snow or something like that. So if you fall off, it's not really that big of a deal. You're probably just going to fall off into some soft sand. So that's not too crazy, right? But yeah, really fun, something to do just outside of Lima, about 4 or 5 hours drive away. But really cool, right? I've never actually tried that before, but I've always wanted to. I think that would be so much fun. All right, and our last stop before we hit Cusco are the Nazca lines, which are these giant lines drawn in geometric patterns and distinct animal shapes in the middle of the desert. Really weird. These photos show you a few examples. These are huge, you guys. So they've been a mystery ever since they were discovered about 80 years ago. And they were only discovered when flying by plane was invented, because you can't really see this feature if you're just walking around on the ground. You got to see it from the sky. All right, they're that giant. So what are these Nazca lines anyway? Part of what makes the Nazca lines so fascinating is their mysteriousness. The Nazca lines themselves are what are called geoglyphs, which are drawings on the ground made by removing rocks and earth to create kind of a negative image or imprint. Kind of like if you were going to go to the beach and dig a moat around your sandcastle, okay? That moat is kind of like a geoglyph somewhat. And back to the Nazca lines, the rocks on the top layer of this desert are a reddish color. And when the lines were dug out, this exposed a highly contrasting light-colored sand underneath. And because there's so little rain or wind or erosion in this area, the exposed designs have stayed largely intact for centuries. Scientists believe that the majority of the lines were made by the Nazca people, who lived in a time before the Inca Empire even. So these Nazca lines are really, really old. There's many theories of why the Nazca lines exist, and you know, were they created to? Who knows? You know, how were they? Why and how were they created? Right? Like that's the big mystery. So a lot of scientists actually think it had to do with the rituals of the people. So some scientists think that these geoglyphs were created to pay maybe a debt to the gods, and probably to plead for water, since they were people who lived in the middle of the desert. But who knows? That's why it's a mystery, right? And anyway, I could go on and on about the mystery of these Nazca lines, but I think jumping on YouTube after this virtual adventure might be your best bet for finding out more and satisfying more of your curiosity. But there's some really neat videos, very mysterious videos of why these are here, but I just think they're so crazy cool. And you should definitely go check out a little bit more on this after the presentation, because there's a lot more I could go into because they're so mysterious and crazy, but like a different source probably will do it better justice than I will to explain it. So, all right, boom, baby, we've made it to Cusco. Have any of you ever seen The Emperor's New Groove? And do you remember this guy, the main character, Cusco? If you haven't seen the movie, Cusco is an arrogant, selfish ruler in a mythical mountain kingdom, and he's transformed into a llama by one of his enemies, and he's then got to work his way back into regaining the throne through the help of Pacha, who is his gentle llama herder. So that's kind of the gist of the movie anyway. The connection here, Cusco's character is based on an ancient Inca ruler, and the kingdom that he rules is based on the ancient Inca city of Cusco in Peru. Cusco is one of my favorite cities of all time. Most people fly into Cusco from Lima when they're planning a trip to the famous lost city of Machu Picchu. And Cusco is a great base and has a lot to offer for families. That said, this city is at 11,000 feet above sea level, and that is really high up there. So when you first get to Cusco, you want to really take it easy. Otherwise, you might be feeling a little bit of altitude sickness, which I can go into more on what that is later. So let's check out a few things to do in Cusco before we have a quick check-in to see what you've learned so far in this section. So anyone who spends a day in Cusco is sure to end up in the Plaza de Armas. And once the heart of the Inca capital, today Plaza de Armas remains the center of action in Cusco. Not only is it one of the prettiest squares in all of South America, but it offers a great vantage point for people watching, one of my personal favorite things to do. And this spot is also a magnet for festivities and local events, so don't be surprised if you catch music or entertainers just popping up out of nowhere, maybe a parade. You just never know what you're going to see in one of these squares. And after you spend some time enjoying the view, you can take a leisurely stroll down the side streets fanning out from the plaza, and you never know what you're going to find. This area is a fun place to shop for souvenirs like colorful dolls and miniature stuffed alpacas and more to decorate your room at home after your trip. All right, and our next stop is the Museo del Inca. There we go. Cusco boasts numerous museums and art galleries, but kids will love Museo Inca. It's a steep block away from the Plaza de Armas, but it's well worth the uphill climb. What makes this museum so great for kids? Little ones are going to enjoy the colorful textiles and the shiny jewelry that's on display, and older ones will be fascinated by the mummies. And kids of all ages will be impressed by the museum's massive stairway, which is guarded by sculptures of mythical creatures. In the courtyard, you'll find Andean weavers giving live demonstrations and selling traditional textiles, in case you want to pick up a few trinkets to bring home with you. Lots of opportunities for that all over Peru. All right, and the last place I want to show you is just outside the city of Cusco. I think it's best seen with a guide. This is the Inca city of Sacsayhuaman, okay? It sits atop a hill north of Cusco. Its name translates as Satisfied Falcon in the Quechuan language. Sacsayhuaman was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983 and is constructed of massive boulders cut with incredible precision. You can see that here. Look how perfectly those huge boulders fit together. And these are boulders that you would not be able to pick up without having a ton of people helping you. And even then, I don't know that you'd be able to pick it up. They literally weigh tons. And what makes this site kid-friendly? Sacsayhuaman features natural rock slides that you kiddos will love. These smooth rocks are perfect for sliding down. It might take a few tries to get it right, but I'm sure most of you can figure it out no problem. I mean, having fun is in your DNA. All right, guys, so we have reached our next check-in slide. Let's go run poll number 2. I'm launching it right now, and we'll go see how much you have learned so far. All right. Okay, should be launching for most of you. I see a couple of you have started responding. Awesome. I am going to read out the questions and answers now, okay? So number 1 is, what is the largest city of Peru called in which most international visitors would fly into to begin their trip? Is it Cusco, Huacachina, Lima, or Nazca? And then we got a couple true and false questions here. We have true or false. The Nazca lines are a collection of giant geoglyphs, which are designs etched into the ground, located in Peru. Is that true or false? And then we have true or false. Cusco is located at an elevation right around sea level. That one might be tough. I just covered that one really quickly, but very important to know. So is it at 0 feet in elevation? I'll let you guys think about these ones just for a few more minutes here. And don't worry if you get the answers wrong, that's okay. You'll learn something out of this, right? All of us sometimes get answers wrong, that's okay. I ain't judging you. Cool. All right. I'm going to end the polling here in just a few seconds, so get your last answers in. All right, I am ending the poll. Sharing the results. All right, so what is the largest city of Peru called in which most international visitors would fly in to begin their trip? The answer to that one is Lima. Lima is the largest city. It's also the capital. That's where most people would come in, and then they might fly out to Cusco after that. There's not a lot of direct flights right into Cusco, and it's not a very big city anyway compared to Lima. Lima's around 9 million people. Cusco has maybe like 500,000 or so right now, okay? So then true or false, the Nazca lines are a collection of giant geoglyphs which are designs etched into the ground, located in Peru. That is true. Nice job, people. And true or false, Cusco is located at an elevation right around sea level. That is a good one. Looks like 81% of you got it right. It's false. Cusco is actually at an elevation of 11,000 feet, which is really high. That's a really high city. Where I live here in Montana is about 32 to 3,500 feet. And you have to go up some really high mountain passes to get up above 10,000 feet even, and you don't hardly even reach 11,000. So Cusco is a really, really high place. So you really have to adjust to it so you don't overdo it when you first get there. Okay, good job, peeps. Let's keep moving. All right, so let's make our way now from my favorite city of Cusco to the lost city of the Incas, Machu Picchu, with a few stops to make along the way in Sacred Valley, including Pisac, Moray, the Inca Salt Mines, and Ollantaytambo. Nice, we have made it. Let's see what we can see along the way to Machu Picchu, okay? So now we finally reached Sacred Valley, and it's not hard to see through this picture why the Incas called this beautiful area by this name. Sacred Valley is a 70-mile long fertile river valley that winds below beautiful mountain peaks, steep forests, and ancient agricultural terraces. It's absolutely breathtaking. And this picture actually gives you a really good view of what those terraces are that I keep talking about, those little stair-looking steps into the ground almost. Those are actually pretty giant. If you were standing on one of the terraces, the next terrace would be probably above, much farther above your head. So it's not like you can just walk up those terraces unless you were a giant, okay? But there are some stairs usually to walk up and down these terraces throughout. But these are basically made for growing crops in the area. Otherwise, it's way too steep. So they just cut flat sections into the ground, kind of like stair steps, so that they can make different crops in these different areas, which is pretty cool. So in Sacred Valley, most of the locals actually still speak Quechua, which is the language of the Incas. And they also grow corn, they raise alpacas, they weave brightly colored textiles, much as their ancestors did before the Spaniards conquered the Incas 5 years ago. Or 5 years ago, oh my gosh, 5 centuries ago. Big difference there. And Sacred Valley is very well set up for tourism, but it often gets bypassed altogether when travelers visit either Cusco or Machu Picchu. And they skip right over this beautiful valley altogether. And I'm here to tell you, Sacred Valley should not be skipped over. Let's check out a few of my favorite hotspots en route from Cusco to Machu Picchu that you should hit up along the way. All right, so our first stop on our way towards Machu Picchu is less than an hour's drive from Cusco. It's a peaceful little town called Pisac. And the Pisac market is very famous. That's what's pictured here in a couple of these photos. And I recommend stocking up on your souvenirs or your crafts at this market. In my opinion, this is where you're going to have the most choice, the most pleasant shopping experience, including seeing a number of ladies like weaving their own goods and things like that, which is pretty cool. And you have the opportunity to probably pick up a pretty good bargain or two at this market when you're outside of kind of the main touristy areas. So you also need to check out while you're in Pisac the greatest claim to fame of theirs, which is the hilltop Inca fortress towering over the village, which is what is that picture up there in the upper right-hand corner. So I definitely consider these ruins worth a hike, although be forewarned that the original narrow stone staircase is very steep. All right, so you've got to give yourself some time. You can kind of see some of the stairs in that photo and how steep they might be to go up and down. Just got to be careful. Don't want to be roughhousing on those things. They're some pretty steep drop-offs too. All right, so Moray is one of the least visited but most fascinating Inca sites in the Sacred Valley. And this area is basically a giant amphitheater, and it's made up of a series of descending rings. And scientists believe that each level was created to simulate a different altitude. allowing the Incas to experiment with different crops all in the same area, which is really cool. So the ones maybe at the bottom have a different altitude than the ones at the top. So they can grow different crops in those different areas. I'm telling you, those Inca were smart cookies. And near Moray, you can also visit the original Inca salt mines that are still in use today. That's what's in this picture. And these are a series of cascading shallow pools built to trap water from a briny hot spring in the area. And then they evaporate it at different levels in these different pools, and this leaves salt behind in its wake. Okay, and this area is very beautiful to photograph. And you can actually purchase pink Andean gourmet salt table salt to take home with you as a gift for your friends and family, which is kind of cool. Bit of a unique gift. All right, and we have reached the town of Ollantaytambo. That's quite the name, right? Some intrepid hikers might use Ollantaytambo as their last stopping point for supplies before they go on a little ways further to hike one of the most famous trails in the world, and that is the Inca Trail. Maybe you've heard of it. And the start of the trail is close by this town, relatively speaking. And the iconic Inca Trail itself is 26 miles long, and it's usually hiked over the course of 4 days and 3 nights. So it's more of like a backpacking trip where you have to carry some of your own stuff. And much of the trail is still the original Inca constructed trail, which is what makes it so amazing, right? And this is not an easy jaunt. I've done it before, and let me tell you, it is no cakewalk. Hikers ascend 2 mountain passes over 13,000 feet, and then they descend way too many stairs to get down to Machu Picchu. However, it's all worth it when you get to Machu Picchu for the first time and you get to see it from the Sun Gate. So hiking a lot of people have heard of the Sun Gate, and they're always wondering, like, how do I get to see Machu Picchu from the Sun Gate? You have to hike the Inca Trail to be able to get in there, okay? And for all you kiddos out there, this is a backpacking trip, and I highly recommend you put it on your bucket list. It is incredibly epic. It is so cool. You won't do anything else like it in your life. It's amazing. And for the rest of us not hiking in via the Inca Trail, there are other ways to get to Machu Picchu. We're gonna leave our car behind in Ollantaytambo here, and we're gonna board Peru Rail, which is a train that'll get us to the little tiny town that's below Machu Picchu, which is called Aguascalientes. And Aguascalientes is the tiny, tiny town of Machu Picchu. Sometimes it's also referred to as Machu Picchu town. And it has hotels there, it has restaurants, markets, you name it, it's got it. It's just a little tiny town. And from here, from Aguascalientes, you have to take this really winding bus ride. It takes about 30 minutes to get up to the actual site of Machu Picchu itself, okay? So that's kind of the most common way I think most people go to Machu Picchu, is taking the train in and then taking that bus up to the top. But there are alternate ways. They're just, you know, maybe not quite as ideal. All right, guys, we finally made it to Machu Picchu. This is the lost city of the Incas. Machu Picchu is sometimes referred to as the lost city because the Spanish never discovered it when they conquered the Inca in the 1500s, and it sat quietly, just undiscovered for hundreds of years, which is really cool. And there's about a zillion things I could cover on this amazing place, but let's just go over a few questions you might have. So first off, where is Machu Picchu? In my opinion, one of the most fascinating things about Machu Picchu is its location. It sits 8,000 feet above sea level atop a mountain in the Andes mountain range. And 3 sides of the city, as you can see in this picture, just drop off over cliffs. There's a 1,400-foot drop off to the Urubamba River. And then at the 4th side of the city is a high mountain. That's Machu Picchu mountain you're seeing in that picture. All right, and when was Machu Picchu built? Archaeologists believe that the city was first built at the peak of the Inca Empire around the year 1450. And construction likely continued on the site until the empire was conquered by the Spanish in the mid-1500s. All right, and why was Machu Picchu built? Machu Picchu was built as the royal estate for the 9th Inca king named Pachacuti. And archaeologists aren't sure why he had it built, but there are a few theories out there. One theory is that it was a vacation retreat for the king. And, you know, it is a warmer spot than the capital city of Cusco. It's also in a beautiful location that would have been a nice getaway for the king. Another theory is that it was built as a sacred religious site. And perhaps it was maybe a combination of both. I see a few questions coming in here too about Machu Picchu, like, can you go hike around and like go in these little houses and things like that? As you can see in this picture, yes, Machu Picchu is pretty open. Like you can, there's a few chains up over like certain things, but for the most part, you can walk all over the site, which is amazing. And I always tell people, get over there now while you can, because this site might not be open to the public for walking around forever. They're constantly changing rules and making them stricter in places like this. So I would hate to think of the day when they close Machu Picchu off altogether and you just have to view it from a viewing tower with binoculars. I hope that never happens, but part of the magic of this site is just going and walking around it. It is so cool. All right, my last question here I want to go over that I thought you might have is, how was Machu Picchu built? This is the part that really blows my mind, okay? The granite rocks used to construct Machu Picchu were extremely heavy, with some weighing over 55 tons. Oh my gosh, that's so heavy. The crazy thing is the Inca didn't use the wheel, so they didn't have anything like vehicles or wheelbarrows or anything like that. And they didn't use or have any strong animals to do the heavy lifting either. So that means that most of the hard work was done by people, which is amazing. The stones were either pushed up the mountain by the bare hands of hundreds of men, or they were chiseled from the side of the mountain itself. Machu Picchu was also constructed with a technique which involves stones being perfectly placed so that no mortar is needed between the stones. And the stones are fit so well together. This is the crazy part. It's amazing when you see it in person, that you can't even fit the blade of a knife between the stones. So they're really, really well carved and put together, okay? And Machu Picchu is really such a cool place. I could keep going on, but I think what you need to know is that this lost city is on many people's bucket list for a reason. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's one of the new 7 wonders of the world. And if you ever get a chance to check it out, do it. And you should also do a little bit more follow-up research, because this place is really, really cool. I have a slide at the end here that will give you some more resources on checking out more on Machu Picchu at the end of this presentation, okay? So now that we've visited the most famous site in all of Peru, let's leave the crowds behind. We're getting close to the end here, and I'm gonna give you a nice big breath of fresh air over Lake Titicaca. Yes, you did hear me right. Quite the name, huh? Lake Titicaca. But ooh, this place is awesome. We need to make our way to the town of Puno, which is in southern Peru. So let's head over there. I know, so random, right? And no, I was not playing the flute there, I was just pretending, but that was my flute because that was the instrument I played back in grade school. And I still have it. I don't really know how to play it anymore though. All right, I just love that traditional Peruvian music, by the way. It is so fun. And would you look at that? We've made it to Puno. Puno is a settlement on the banks of Lake Titicaca. It's a regional trading hub. Puno is also considered Peru's folkloric capital. It's known for its traditional festivals featuring vibrant music and particularly dancing. And Puno, with its lakeside location, is the perfect jumping off point for exploring Lake Titicaca. So a little bit on Lake Titicaca itself. What's with the name, first of all? Local communities believe the shape of the lake depicts that of a puma hunting the rabbit. Thus the name Titicaca comes from the word Titicaca, meaning rock of the puma in Aymara, which is a local indigenous language. Lake Titicaca straddles the borders of Bolivia and Peru and has become one of the most famous lakes in the world. And why is this lake so famous? It's said to be the birthplace of the Incas, so it's home to numerous ruins. Also, its waters are famously still and brightly reflective, which is awesome for taking pictures. And around the lake is Titicaca National Reserve, which shelters some really cool, rare aquatic wildlife. All right, and this is really awesome. So the Uros Islands, this place is really cool, guys. So of course, when you're visiting Lake Titicaca, no visit would be complete without a stop at the magical and mysterious floating Uros Islands, which are home to the indigenous Uru people of Peru and Bolivia. Okay, that's these people kind of hanging out on this floating island here. So these are man-made, right? These man-made floating islands are incredible. The indigenous people who made these islands used the totora reed, which grows in the lake, to create well over 100 of these floating islands. And each island can house up to about 10 families, and the islands are tethered together by rope so they don't drift apart, and they're anchored down to the bottom of the lake by really heavy eucalyptus tree trunks. And for the Uros people, the totora reed is at the very center of their lives. Not only does the reed keep them afloat, literally, they also use it to build their boats, their homes, their handicrafts they sell to tourists, as well as for medicine and for food. And the islands are in a constant state of decay, and so every day the people must cut reeds from the shallower part of the lake where they grow, and then they spread them out over the islands to keep the islands up to date and not sinking. Each of these man-made floating islands can survive about 10 years before it sinks too low in the water and needs to be replaced altogether. And although the life of the Uru people may seem primitive, they do have access to schools and education, and many of the islands actually have solar panels for electricity, which is amazing. And the lifestyle of the Uru people is very unique, but this has been a way of life for them for over 1,000 years. It's amazing that we can still see this tradition in practice to this day. So yes, there are boat tours that take you out to these floating islands, and you can go see these people's way of life for yourself, which is pretty cool. All right, guys, and our final stop on this Peru tour, even though there are many, many, many more locations within this wonderful country we can add to the list, is going to be Arequipa and nearby Colca Canyon. So let's take a look at where this is at as we depart Lake Titicaca and head west. Nice. All right, we've made it to Arequipa. This is our final destination, you guys, before we go into the Q&A. So start getting your Q&A ready, your questions, okay? And unlike most of the destinations we just visited, there are no Inca artifacts or ruins in this city. Arequipa is called the White City because many of the buildings are built of sillar, which is a white stone. And this stone was taken from the many volcanoes that surround this city, including the towering El Misti, which is shown in this picture. And El Misti is the most prominent of the 3 volcanoes that guard over the city. As you can see, it's rising up right out of the back there, right? Can't really miss it. The other 2 volcanoes are called Chachani and Pichu Pichu. Arequipa is what I consider your one-stop shop to knock a few things off of your Peru trip list. It's got a host of museums for the history buff. It's got adventure sports for the adrenaline junkie. It's got restaurants for the foodie. And it's got shopping for the shopaholic. Oh yeah, it's got a lot going on. So let's take a quick side trip to nearby Colca Canyon to see what that's all about. So the driving route to the Colca Canyon is not to be missed. You'll cross over Parapampa Pass, which has been dubbed the highest pass in the Americas. And from the top of the pass, there's no less than 5 volcanoes visible from this point, which is awesome. And eventually, if you keep driving, you'll arrive to Colca Canyon, which is now the 3rd most popular tourist attraction in Peru, seeing over 150,000 visitors come through every year. And that's not really that bad for a place that only 50 years ago had just one road connecting it to the outside world. That's amazing. So Colca Canyon itself is the world's 2nd deepest canyon. It's over 11,000 feet deep at its deepest point, which makes it nearly twice as deep as the United States Grand Canyon. And the canyon itself, Colca Canyon, is impressive, but the area's attractions also include soaring condors, endless trekking routes, and unshakable traditions that have been little altered since the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, which is pretty cool. All right, and El Mirador Cruz del Condor. So the Mirador Cruz del Condor is the most popular viewing point of Colca Canyon. And the canyon is around 4,000 feet deep at this point, and you're almost guaranteed to see these flying birds, these condors, circling up from the depths against breathtaking scenery. And there's a few places in the world that offer the chance to see these birds at such close quarters. This is one of them, okay? These birds are really, really amazing. So condors are the largest flying birds in the world by combined measurement of weight and wingspan. And these birds have nearly an 11-foot wingspan. That's huge. That's almost twice the length of the bed that you sleep in every night, and this is the largest wingspan of any bird on planet Earth. Condors are also scavengers that mostly feed off of dead animals and decomposed food. They're credited with being nature's cleanup crew. Someone's got to get rid of all those dead animals that die naturally, right? And they also help stop the spread of diseases from sick animals. So if a sick animal dies, they actually will eat that animal, and that's okay because they have stomachs that can deal with that kind of thing. They're really neat birds to see in the wild. They are huge seeing them close up. Really, really cool. All right, guys, we're going to do one last check-in here. I'm going to run the poll right now. I'm just launching it, so you should be seeing it come up on your screen any minute now. And let's see. Hopefully you guys are seeing this here. See if anyone starts voting. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, so number one question is true or false? It is believed that the Inca used heavy machinery and strong animals to move the rocks used for the building of Machu Picchu. Ooh, I see a lot of people changing their answers on this one. Is that true or false? All right, number two, true or false? The floating Uros Islands of Lake Titicaca are a natural phenomenon that have existed for hundreds of years. Man, these last ones are kind of tough. I can see I'm tripping a few of you up. And number three, which is not a true fact about the Andean condors of Colca Canyon? They have a nearly 11-foot wingspan. They're scavengers that eat dead animals. They're the largest flying bird in the world by combined measurement of weight and wingspan, or they can't fly because their weight far exceeds their wingspan's capabilities. Which one of those is not true? I'm going to give you just about 10 more seconds to answer here. All right, guys. So I'm going to end our polling right now and share the results. So number one, true or false? Looks like 84% of you got this right. It is believed that the Inca used heavy machinery and strong animals to move the rocks used for the building of Machu Picchu. That is false. That one, they didn't have any heavy machinery. They didn't have any strong animals. That's the really amazing thing about the Incas, is that they did things with people power. So amazing, right? Okay, so then number two, true or false? The floating Uros Islands of Lake Titicaca are a natural phenomenon that has existed for hundreds of years. Ooh, it looks like I got a few of you on this one. That one is also false. The floating Uros Islands of Lake Titicaca are man-made. They're made by humans out of the reeds that grow around the lake, which makes them really, really interesting and cool, okay? And then number three, which is not a true fact about the Andean condors of Colca Canyon, and it looks like a lot of you got this one right. They can't fly because their weight far exceeds their wingspan's capabilities. Oh, they can fly all right. So that one is false, all right? So we're gonna stop our share results. We're gonna keep on moving here to the question and answer section, one of my favorite places. All right, so if you guys have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A, all right? I've been keeping track of a few that have been coming through as we go, and let's see. If you have any questions, just throw them in the Q&A and I'll start answering them, okay? And that is such a sweet compliment from Emma and Megan saying they want me to be their school teacher. Thank you guys, that is so cute, I love that. I would love being a school teacher. I think school teachers rock. All right, so let's move on to our first question. Keith is asking, I talked a little bit about altitude sickness and I actually forgot to go back to this. He's asking, can you get altitude sickness in Peru? And I said, I'm gonna say right now that yes, you can definitely get altitude sickness. It kind of hits people usually from around 8,000 feet and up. And remember, Cusco is at 11,000 feet. that means you're really, 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 really high. And so, yes, you can get altitude sickness. And for those of you who don't know what altitude sickness is, it's when you feel kind of sick when you go to a high elevation too quickly, okay? So for example, most international travelers fly into Lima, which is at sea level or 0 feet, and then fly to Cusco, which I mentioned earlier, which is at 11,000 feet. And that's a big change for your body to adjust to in a single day. So it might take you a day or two to adjust. So when you have altitude sickness, you might get a headache, you might have trouble breathing, you might get kind of dizzy or sick or have trouble eating or sleeping, different things like that. And that's okay. This usually goes away after a little bit of time. There's definitely ways to help prevent altitude sickness as well. You just want to take it easy, first of all, whenever you're going to a new destination that's really high, like Cusco, for about 24 hours. And just eat foods with lots of carbohydrates, drink a ton of water, and just try and rest a little bit. You don't have to be walking around every 2 seconds of the day. Just relax, all right? Let's see, another question is going to be, oh, Lucas had a good one. Do you have any tips for hiking the Inca Trail? And I love that you're asking about this, Lucas. The Inca Trail is awesome, and I think everyone should hike it at some point during their lifetime. And we talked a little bit about the Inca Trail earlier, but if you don't remember, this is the backpacking trip that most people hike over the course of 4 days and 3 nights. And a few of my tips are that you, first of all, need to do some research ahead of time. A couple of big things that you should know are that you need to have a guide and you need to have a permit. And the permits sell out really quickly, so definitely do some research there. And I also recommend researching a good tour company. When I went, I personally wanted to find one that had good sleeping pads, roomy tents, good food, that kind of stuff. And you actually have porters that come along with you, just people that come along with you that are hired to trek alongside you, that carry all your stuff, or you know, your tent and your sleeping pads and your sleeping bags, that kind of thing. So all you have to carry on you is your day pack with your layers for the day, your water, your food, snacks, maybe in your lunch, that kind of thing. So that's really cool. And that means that you don't have to carry like a 50-pound pack. Someone else is doing the carrying for you. And one last thing, invest in good hiking boots and break them in ahead of time. That will definitely help you out as well. All right. So what is the best way to see the Nazca lines? That question is coming in from Connor. This is still on my bucket list. I haven't seen these either, and I really want to go and check them out. But from what I understand, you first have to get to Lima, which is the international hub that we talked about, the biggest city. And then you've got to drive a half day to the beachside town of Paracas. That's about 250 miles away from Lima. And the best way to see the Nazca lines is from the air in a plane. So you definitely would want to arrange some sort of flight over the Nazca lines. And there's multiple flights at the nearby Pisco airport. They last about 75 minutes from what I understand. And the planes are really small. They only fit about 10 to 12 people. But each person in the plane, if you go on a viewing tour, gets a window seat, which is awesome. So you'll definitely have guaranteed sightings of the Nazca lines from the air, which is really awesome. So I really want to do that someday. I think that'd be awesome, Connor. All right, and Annie is asking, are all the destinations that you went over on this adventure something that could be done in one trip? Probably not. That's a good question. And unless you have maybe like 4 to 6 weeks of vacation time on your hands and probably a pretty big budget, a lot of money to spend on hotels and flying from one place to another and that kind of thing, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Most people that I work with plan a trip that takes about 10 to 14 days and covers Lima for a few days, Cusco for a few days, Sacred Valley for maybe 2 or 3 days, and Machu Picchu for a couple of days at the end there. And sometimes they'll include an extension on to Lake Titicaca or Arequipa, or maybe 4 or 5 days up in the Amazon to get away from kind of the more touristy areas of Peru. But I highly recommend getting to Peru and just doing the whole Machu Picchu thing for your first trip and just getting that checked off your bucket list first. There's still plenty of other things that you can go back to on your next trip to Peru to check off. But first, get kind of the big ones off the list, and then go back and see what else Peru has to offer. There's so much in this country that I didn't even go over on this presentation today. All right, and Carrie is asking, do you have to speak Spanish or any other languages you mentioned to go to Peru? That's a great question, Carrie. The answer is no, you don't need to speak Spanish, especially if you go to the more touristy areas of Lima, Cusco, Sacred Valley, and Machu Picchu. And if you go on a guided tour and you have a guide who speaks English and Spanish, he or she can do most of the communicating for you. However, the farther off the tourist track you go in Peru, the more handy it will be to know at least a little bit of Spanish if you're going on your own. So I always think it's a good to know at least a few basics of the language of any country that you're going to, just to get around, you know, in case you get lost and you're by yourself or something. You definitely want to be able to talk to someone. And also just knowing how to say please and thank you, in this case, por favor and gracias, can take you a long way. All right, people like polite people, so that's always good stuff to have in your arsenal. All right, and John, we're going to do a few more questions here. John asked, is the best time of year to visit in the summer? And does Peru get snow? All right. As for your snow question, remember that the Andes mountain range in Peru has some mountains that go up above 20,000 feet. So in that case, there's going to be some snow in the tops of those mountains year round. Otherwise, since Peru is located south of the equator, the seasons are opposite of what they are up here in the northern hemisphere where we're at in the United States. So our summer, let's say May through September, is Peru's winter. But that's also Peru's dry season. And that's actually the most popular season to visit Peru during their winter because it's less rainy and the skies are bright and blue and sunny. And it's cool, but it's not really snowy cold like we get up here in the States. And Peru's summer, which is the United States winter, is warmer, but also much wetter with frequent heavy showers. And I did the Inca Trail in Peru's winter. I went in late March and it was definitely really wet. So that is no lie. It rains a lot. It was fun, it was beautiful, but I maybe would go during their winter the next time to try that out. All right, and I'm just gonna answer one more question here. Dallas is asking, okay, this is more of a statement. She said, my mom told me that you can only drink bottled water in Peru. Is that true? That's a good question. And that's actually a really important question that you want to research before you go to any country, because water is very important, right? And the reason your mom is telling you that is because the water that comes out of the tap in your hotel or a restaurant might not have the same treatment that we use here in the States. And while a local might be okay drinking that tap water because their stomach is used to it, it might give you a bit of a gurgly and upset stomach, which is never fun to deal with when you're on vacation. So I highly recommend drinking bottled water. Your mom is right on this one, Dallas. Also, I recommend to even try to avoid drinks that have ice in them, since that ice could have come from untreated water that can melt into your drink and make you sick. I just kind of try and use common sense, I guess, and I always plan ahead to have bottled water with me. And this doesn't just go for Peru, but any Latin America country that I visit. All right. Nice questions, guys. So many questions that I have not answered. I apologize if I did not get to your question. But let's just go on to this resources slide. This is, if you want to write down any of these websites, I guess, there's going to be some more sources that you can look at here if you want to discover more. So that first one, to learn more about the Incas and their way of life, their homes, their government, their food, and their class system. Check out that first website there, and you're going to learn a lot more about the Incas. There's a lot of cool stuff I didn't go over. Number two is we found a great source that has a list of children's books about the Peruvian culture, both fiction and nonfiction, and some are even written in both Spanish and English, so you can kind of teach yourself some of the words, which is cool, in Spanish. And then finally, that third link is Nat Geo, National Geographic. Nat Geo Kids has a super fun short video on 2 kids' experience in Peru with llamas, so you'll want to check that one out as well, okay? So remember, this virtual adventure is recorded, so if I'm moving too fast and you don't have time to write these down, just find the recording on our website tomorrow and fast forward to the slide to find what you're looking for. All right, and guess what's happening next week? We're headed to the state of Utah, which is home to 5 different national parks. And we'll explore Canyonlands, Arches, Capitol Reef, Bryce Canyon, and Zion National Parks and discover what features make each of them uniquely different. And I hope you'll join us at 2:00 p.m. Eastern next Thursday, same time, same place. Utah is awesome. I can't wait. That'll be really fun. So hope you can join. And then last but not least, we are getting very, very much close to the end here. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. We really appreciate you joining us for our virtual adventure to Peru today. Please check out our virtual adventures for kids page to keep up to date on our upcoming webinars at the link on this page, or you can just go to austinadventures.com and you'll see a virtual adventures banner pop right up at the top of the page that you can click on and stay tuned, okay? As for my closing comments, again, thank you to so much everyone for joining. It's awesome. I know we're all sticking it out the best we can through this tough time, and all of you kids who joined me in Peru today, I am so proud of you for not just sitting on your couch and playing video games or watching Netflix, which would be really easy to do right now, honestly. It's so cool that you've learned about some pretty neat places today in this world, and I hope this presentation in particular inspired you to want to go to Peru someday once it's safe to travel again. I know I can't wait to go again myself. All right, until next time, everyone, adios.